All right. Well, good afternoon. This is Riot4radio, and it seems to be a packed panel here that is going to be taking place. So I'm not going to do a whole lot here. I'm going to let Jim Ellinger here from Austin Airwaves pretty much take care of all of that because he knows he knows what he's doing here. I just wanted to let you know that that we're here at WXOX, and we're happy to have everyone in here for the for this particular group and also for the weekend. Also wanted to mention the sponsors: Spinatron, SCMS Incorporated, Broadcast Equipment, Mad Pixel Art and Design, Broadcast Tool and Die, and of course the Pacifica Network. And let's see, so we've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to go ahead and let Jim go from there.
All righty. Well, thank you, Brian, and thanks to everyone there at WXOX who, in addition to doing everything else involved in running a radio station during a particularly tumultuous time there in Louisville, have offered to host the National Grassroots Radio Summit virtually. It clearly has been a hit. Lots of crowded Zoom rooms, lots and lots of questions. We want to thank everybody involved in producing this event. It has really been worthwhile. And we certainly hope that we'll be able to meet physically, literally, in person, without too much delay. This is the Riot4radio panel. We have a number of great speakers, and we have a couple of great speakers that they may make it or they may not. Joining us will be LaGanzie Kale. He's the manager of KLEK in Jonesboro, Arkansas, a veteran community broadcaster. And Davyne, the general manager in Ashland, Virginia. No, Ashland.
Asheville, North Carolina.
North Carolina, pardon me, in North Carolina, as well as our own Brian Manley from WXOX. We'll allow him to speak first since he's with the home team. The other panelists we hope to have, but we are sorry to say we cannot guarantee, are Hiram Gilberto Garcia. Hiram, I Am Hiram, has certainly made a national name for himself on the streets of Austin. He's a prolific live streamer. He has broadcast thousands of hours. He has many, many thousands of followers on Twitter and YouTube. He himself has become the center of a considerable controversy, whereas angry demonstrators with righteous causes, like shooting black people, are cheesed off at these guys because they're broadcasting too much, that the police are listening in. They make no bones about it. They're listening in. One cop in Austin said, "Oh, we love Hiram." And he's maybe needed to be a little more delicate or hit that mute button. I have, sorry to say, personally witnessed Hiram being assaulted and his camera equipment knocked down. He is a bit of a scrapper. And we know that the folks in Portland and we know the folks in Seattle have been verbally and physically assaulted. This is a new aspect of as the country sort of falls apart here. Usually reporters, generally speaking, old school, you leave the reporter alone. You know, you yell at him maybe. That has changed. So we're not sure if Shaylain Chamberland or Ian Kennedy of Concrete Reporting will make it or not, and we're very sorry for that. Concrete Reporting got their name. I love this. So many demonstrators, so many people said, "Get that camera out of my face. Do not take my picture." All right. So they aimed the camera at the concrete. And they've done that so much they became known as Concrete Reporting. We're going to talk about a number of things: how to report things, how to feed things back to your station and to other stations. We're going to talk about which I think is going to be particularly helpful, press credentials. Davyne and I and others will have pictures of press credentials about how you can make them DIY or officially produced, as well as things like a little bit less body armor and how you should present yourself perhaps in a demonstration that is likely to turn violent, or is likely to see an aggressive police response. The slogan of this workshop, Riot4Radio, is this story worth getting my ass beat? So we would like to roll this over to Brian Manley. Brian is there in Louisville. Louisville, of course, was the scene of the Breonna Taylor killing, which remains almost completely unresolved. There have been no arrests of the police. A woman was shot dead in her own bed in her own apartment. She is an emergency medical technician, as is one of the members of the board of directors of Austin Airwaves. That hit home. And the fact that the quote was that America was shocked and appalled by the shooting of Breonna Taylor, but Louisville was merely just, seen it before. It's a very bad situation there. We extend our condolences to the folks, the community, the African-American community of Louisville. And we note that the term Riot4Radio, that wasn't used lightly. We understand that rioting is violence. Rioting is the voice of persons unheard. We know that Louisville has been targeted for rioting, and it's a horrible thing. Local businesses, local barbecue joints have been hit. We hope things work out. We are not optimistic. And so what we'll do is we'll record this bit of history as it plays out in front of us. Brian, why don't you tell us how things were there in Louisville and how your station responded?
Hello, hello from Louisville. Well, I guess the big point and the contention around the use of the word riot for me has been that the protests here are 99% peaceful. I'm going to say 100% peaceful. The businesses have not been assaulted. I mean, we've been protesting in Louisville continuously for about 140 days now. They started around May 28th. I joined them May 29th and have been down there ever since, recording and reporting on it. Nothing, except for the first 2 nights, there was some violence and some businesses damaged. Since then, the boards went up on the businesses downtown, but I just feel like it's an unnecessary thing here in Louisville, because the only violence that really ever happens, we have peaceful marches that cops will suddenly move in on and kind of take a violent turn just because of that. The businesses have not ever been the target of these protests here. I have been recording, and I make sound collages mixed with reports and commentary that I air weekly to kind of sum up what's happening here in town. I guess I can go ahead and play one of the pieces that I recorded recently for Pacifica.
Sure.
Let's see.
I note as you load that up, the barbecue reference was, if I'm not mistaken, a well-known, highly loved barbecue cook, chef, was shot in his kitchen, was he not?
He was shot defending his business as the National Guard. I mean, he was out after curfew. He fed people from his business, and the National Guard moved in. And yeah, he was shot as he was defending his business.
His kitchen, his barbecue joint.
Right.
We're very sorry for you.
Okay. I did this just a few minutes ago.
You may recall a common chant, what's with all the riot gear? There ain't no riot here. And that the police, as often as not, it would seem, are looking for trouble, whereas most of the demonstrators are looking to get away from trouble. The problem does not seem to be getting any better and is being exacerbated by the White House. We are very worried.
Yeah, I'm having a little problem finding that audio right now.
All right. Well, let me take up a little time and say this is the Riot4Radio workshop. At the virtual GRC, coming to you virtually from Louisville. It's been going very well. Lots and lots of people here. Definitely go to the chat rooms after the workshops to catch up with people and make new friends. It'd be about this time Austin Airwaves would start buying people beers. I guess we'll have to wait on that. After Brian runs his tape, we're going to have LaGanzie Kale from Jonesboro, and after that, Davyne from Ashland. And if you're ready, we'll hear that tape.
Yeah, not ready.
We're working on it. Remember,
Okay,
you
why
have to
don't
have
we,
the window open.
Sure. LaGanzie, are you ready?
Yes, I can go ahead and begin. So,
That'd just be fine. Welcome to LaGanzie.
but basically, the perspective that I bring is as an African American man that is covering protests that pretty much are happening because of police abuse of African American men. So, while I'm out there doing what I do, I'm thinking about, okay, I have to cover this. But, coping with the emotions of dealing with a black man in tense situations. And so what I want to share with you guys, and hopefully this will let me, so we're gonna see if this works. So just kind of start with a couple pictures. So we had a protest in Jonesboro. It was about 1,000 people that came out. This is what I actually had on that day. Let me see if I can move this windows where I can go to the next picture. Move this over a bit. I just had on my dashiki that day, so you can kind of see me in front of the crowd. A local professional photographer did an amazing job of capturing all of these photos. So this right here, this is a screen capture.
I'm sorry, we can barely see your photos. I think you're just showing your file.
Let me see if I can. Does it show up now that I have it screen maximized?
No.
No, just the thumbnail, just the thumbnails.
That is weird. So hold on. Seems like we're all kind of having issues here. Stop share.
The excitement of live radio.
Okay, so somebody help me out. How do you share? How do you share the
Brian,
actual
are you ready?
picture? Oh, it's files. Let me see files. Maybe if I do. Well, no, it's taking me to Dropbox.
No problem. Take your time.
Maybe if you start up like a slideshow kind of thing from them.
I can do that. Let me.
You do need to have the files open actually before you can share them. It doesn't allow you to open.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so let me. Okay, I've got it open. So now I'm click photos. Okay, can y'all see it now? Or is it still showing a thumbnail?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So this is me in the dashiki. Here's another one. Okay, so as I was saying earlier, this is a screen capture. When I went live, and this was a protest that just kind of organically happened, it kind of came out of the middle of nowhere. I literally had about 15, 20 minutes notice that this was happening. And as you see, it got up to 3,200 people. And the only reason why I didn't go up higher than that is because my iPhone overheated. This right here, this is the #1 rated commercial station in town. It's a country station, 104.9, the Fox. The GM of that station, he also has about 4 other stations, and he inboxed me in the middle of my stream and said, hey, I want to share this on our page. I hope you didn't mind. I gave you credit for it, which you can see here. So we were pretty much the only media outlet that were at these protests. So I'm going to stop and then pull up a couple of video clips. So this first one, this was from part 1. This is 3720. This is of the police chief actually speaking to the protesters. So let me get this queued up. All right, so go back to the meeting and hit. All right, so can everybody see the video?
I see the image. We're ready.
Okay, I just
play.
want to make sure people. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, we're good.
That's actually the chaplain of the police department.
You all matter, God. That's right. Every life matters. Every life. It's like we're like the main ones being targeted. That's right. I understand why y'all saying black people matter, but all lives matter. I agree. We're being targeted right now, so why y'all feel black lives matter right now? That's right. Amen. What matters now?
That's the police chief. He comes on my radio show once a month, every month.
I see you. Okay. I've heard you and I've seen you since I took over chief. 2014. Because this country had unrest during that time. Ferguson, Missouri. I've done what I can do to try to build these bridges in our community for the past 5 years.
Again, for the organizers, I will, if there's a sharing thing, I can share the full clips, but I know I don't have a lot of time, so just going to kind of just show a little tidbits.
You're good.
Okay, so this is part 2. This is the only part of the protest that actually somewhat turned violent. There was a white gentleman in a vehicle that tried to run over some protesters. I didn't actually catch him doing it because my camera was pointing somewhere else, but you can kind of see the people that are running in the background. So let me get that queued up. Okay, then go back to screen sharing. All right, here we go.
So let me get back over here. I don't know. It looks like they're not stopping. Looks like they may not stop. That burns. It looks like we may march all the way down Caraway. Did somebody fire a gunshot?
At first, people thought someone had fired a gun.
SUV right there. 140.
I tried to get his license plate number.
It was a black SUV. Looked like a Chevy Equinox. First 3 letters was 140. If anybody watches this later catches that.
Basically, what happened here is he tried to run over the protesters and actually pulled out his AR-15 at the protesters. And I have one more. This was later on in the evening when there was an incident at a local overpass where some protesters had thrown rocks at police cars up under, and this would brought out the SWAT team. And to be honest with you, I was very triggered pulling this up for today. It was very emotional because there was a point in which I was standing in front of them, and this is where being a black man doing this kind of work comes in. You know, in the back of my mind, like, am I going to become a hashtag in the middle of just trying to provide a service to the community? So I'm not going to really show the part in which I was confronted. Like, again, I can post the whole video if people want to watch it, but I do just want to share this part. This is where a couple of the protesters showed their agitation with the police. So let me
Escalate.
All right. Share screen.
I'll feel free. But let me come out before you like this around my partner with a stick, right? And I feel like a minority, right? So how can you come out with a stick if you don't know the person like you want to get on me?
There may be some strong language here.
You look like you ready to hit somebody with an apple. I mean, you look like you want all the smoke. He came out here.
James, can you guys give us an update of what's
That's the
going on?
photographer
How long
took
you
the
been on
pictures.
scene?
But I'll stop there again out of respect for time. So that kind of gives you a little snippet of my experience covering these protests. Again, there were several others that happened in Jonesboro, which we also live streamed. Thankfully, with the exception of that one incident I mentioned, they all were peaceful. But the main takeaway that I kind of wanted to share with you guys is that it's a very emotionally charged time, especially if you are a person of color that's being affected by all this police violence and these protests. And if you're a person of color like myself and you are working in this field, it kind of hits a lot more personally, because at the end of the day, you're still trying to do your job, but you also realize, you know, this affects you on so many different levels beyond the scope of your work. So that's kind of it for my introduction. as we go on with discussion, I'll be happy to contribute more.
We'll ask one quick question. We will have time for questions. This was live on the air?
Yes, yes. These were, I downloaded these videos from the KLEK Facebook. All of these were live videos that I did.
Did you do a disclaimer saying this is a live broadcast of a tumultuous time in our town, and please excuse the 7 dirty words that almost certainly got over
To
the
be
air?
honest with you, I did. All of this happened just so quickly. And I told you with the first one, I literally had like 15, 20 minutes notice. And then even with the subsequent ones, people were like texting me and said, hey, they're over on this part of town. Because again, nobody else was covering it. We have 2 TV stations. They weren't there. The other radio stations weren't there. The newspaper wasn't there. So Jonesboro, a community of about 80,000 people, were looking to me that day to provide this coverage. So, when someone said, hey, they're over here and we want to see what's going on, I just hopped in my car and went. Now, again, my first thought is keeping myself safe.
Yes.
And then my second thought is, providing this coverage. One thing I do want to add is that in the midst of when I was standing in front of, and I think I missed a picture though. I didn't show the picture of I'm sorry.
No problem.
I got a couple more pictures to share.
Sure.
Let's get this queued back up. I'm getting kind of decent at the screen sharing now. Okay, again, this just kind of shows how, when I say the entirety of Jonesboro was watching, we reached over 155,000 people that day, over 107,000 views on the video.
Wow.
This, I know you can't see it that well because I was kind of off at a distance. I'm probably not going to let me blow it up. But this was me standing in front of all of those police in riot gear. And I'll be honest with you, I broke down. Like I said, I was triggered actually pulling up this video for this conference today. Several of our KLEK donors and people who support the station, were texting me saying it's going to be okay, just hang in there. We appreciate what you do. So having that support of the community really helped me to get through that moment. This is kind of like a little bit of a close-up of the police with their riot shields on. Jim, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I mean, not only are you the voice of the community, during a situation like that, the community is speaking to you, you and your person in the community voice. It is interesting how the local newspaper and the commercial stations, they were caught off guard either. Somebody's got the day off. A lot of these events occur with little or no notice now, where they're on social media on a closed list. Partly intentionally, that they just want their people to know and not opposition. We'll get to more questions in the end. But was there, other than the gentleman, using that word loosely, who drove into the crowd and waved a weapon, was there any opposition or was there any trouble with counter protesters?
There were no counter protesters. Now, if you were to actually look up these videos on our page and read the comments, Jonesboro is a very conservative city.
Sure, it's Arkansas.
So, I mean, Jonesboro is 80% Caucasian, a little over 18% African American. So, there definitely were a segment of the population that thought this was a waste of time. That, there were some people who probably secretly wished that we all had gotten run over. But as far as like actual physical threats or violence or counter protests, there were none. Pretty much just a bunch of keyboard warriors.
Yep. Well, thank goodness for that. Clearly, there are people who run from fires and people who run to fires. Our hat is off to you for spot news coverage, as the commercial stations would say. It's fairly remarkable, and we're glad we could at least share it with this crowd. And we'll get back with you for more questions.
Okay.
Brian, you got that tape unwound?
I got help from Lady Jam. So
Hey, way to go, Lady Jam.
Before you roll it, Mary, what I wanted to preface, this was recorded Wednesday, September 23rd. I was down at Breonna Taylor Square, also known as Injustice Park. I was standing in the middle of the crowd as they were hearing the results of Daniel Cameron's grand jury, which brought no justice in this case. So That's what these sounds start off with. You can go
Okay.
ahead and roll it.
Sorry, were you able to hear that when I was rolling that? I asked the question.
No.
Okay, thanks. Okay, hang on 1 second.
As we wind that tape back, we'll remind you that part of this discussion will be about press credentials, both authorizing and the DIY of making press credentials.
You having problems, Mary?
Yeah, we're gonna have to figure out a different way for this. I'm sorry. You shared it before where we heard it on your computer before, so I'm wondering why it's not working. But anyway, yes.
Let me try something.
Okay.
You need a moment or two?
Yes, go ahead.
Brian, you want me to go to Davyne?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, no problem. Again, technical things happen on broadcast all the time. Nothing unusual for us radio folks. Davyne Dial, you're there, right?
Yes, I'm here.
You're in Ashville. You're also a veteran community radio broadcaster. I've seen you at many conferences. How did things unfold for you all there?
Well, they started on May 29th, and right from the beginning, the person that I'm going to show you the press pass of, who had gone out, who was a native, biracial, native Ashvillian, had gone for ice cream. During the pandemic, he had gotten some camera equipment as a hobby. And since living in Asheville, he knew that he saw this crowd gathering in Asheville like he had never seen before. And so he went and got his camera and started live streaming. So that was May 29th. He covered all of the live streams that happened in Asheville for the next month. He ended up with 1,500,000 views on his videos.
My goodness.
And about a week into it, or about even 3 or 4 days into it, they established a curfew in town, and I contacted him because the press was one of the people who could be there. So I contacted him and said, "Hey, you're doing a great job." He was very neutral in his coverage and just was gathering the facts, basically. And so naturally, I thought, well, this guy would be good for the radio station. And so I contacted him and said, "I can give you press credentials so that you can be out after the curfew." And so he has been with us ever since. So press credentials, because you needed that definitely whenever they put the curfew on. Press credentials are, from what I understand in my research, are not necessarily, there's no like national press credential company that issues press releases or press passes. You do have to check the laws in your state. In our state, there are no laws against a media company like ours printing up press passes so that whenever things like this happen and the police come to you because there's a curfew, you can prove that you're associated with media. So what we did on our press passes, I'm going to share the screen here. First of all, I did a QR code linking to our page, which showed our license, and also linked to our page on the FCC's website that shows that we're a legitimate radio station. So here's the back. Well, whoops, I lost my picture here.
Well, we can see Matt's press credentials.
Okay, so I'm not seeing it. So, all right, so you can see that there's a barcode underneath. I printed this up on my, on Photoshop. I came in and I took a picture of him. And can you see the back side that says press Matt Henson?
Yes.
Okay, good. So you can see both. All right, and so that one has a
Well,
QR.
actually, I'm looking at one side. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, so let me go make sure I've. That might have been the first one. So on the back is a QR code that also links to it, all of our credentials. So it's very important that in these situations, which are very, unprecedented in the country, that you have all your legalities lined up. So make sure that you're doing the right thing. If you have access to an attorney that can advise you that, yes, you do have a right to film on the street, that you do have a right to go into a, ask the police and talk to the police or anything like that, just to make sure that you're covered legally. Because the first thing that somebody who's wanting to cause trouble is going to do is accuse you of doing something illegal.
Mm-hmm.
In our state, one person can videotape without anyone else's permission. So I don't have to ask someone else when I'm filming them, can I film you? It's a one consent situation here.
But they can still get upset with you.
They'll get upset. Yes, I wanted to say, I've live streamed for over 10 years. I've covered all manner of community, public affairs meetings, school board meetings, candidate forums, committee meetings. If they don't want you there, they look at you like you went in there with a loaded gun. So that's why you need to know, and if possible, have the state statute in your pocket so that you can pull it out and say, look, I'm allowed to be here. This is a community, this is a public meeting, or these streets are public streets. I have a right to be here and I can film. And then also be wearing your press pass, just also to back that up.
What if it's a nonprofit's, like a nonprofit board meeting? Is that considered a public?
No.
Okay.
No, you need permission. You need permission for that.
Yeah, keep going. But I mean, generally speaking, if you're standing on the street or you're in a government meeting and there's a 7 o'clock board meeting, that is perfectly legal. Typically, you are welcome to cover it. There may be people there who glare at you. There may be people who flip you off. There may be people who get in your face. These are all minor altercations by the standards we see nowadays.
Right.
Please go.
Yeah, anything that's taxpayer funded is public.
Okay. Now, so of the various scenarios on how a lanyard, a press credential, gets around a reporter's neck, so you've gone to considerable effort doing the FCC license and the station ID. There's a link there that you pick up the phone going, yeah, that's our gal. Yeah. But you made your press credentials, right? Those are DIY. Okay.
Those are made out of Photoshop, and you can use any art program to do it. You don't necessarily need Photoshop because Photoshop is a little advanced, but any of the free art programs that you can download on your computer, you just need to get an app that allows you to have make a QR code, and
right.
And they're available. Some are paid and some are free. I haven't bought. I think I bought an app from iTunes for maybe $15 because I have other needs for QR codes.
Sure.
But that QR code, that cop or that person of authority can can capture that code on their phone, and it's going to go straight to your credentials. And you want to be as credentialed as you can possibly be in these situations, because
very good.
They trust credentials. You know, when you've got a riot going on and the cops are out there, if you can show that you've got federal credentials, like you have an FCC license, they're going to be less likely to manhandle you.
Agreed, and especially in a small, normally friendly town,
Yes.
you've got to be a well-known, popular lady in town, or in your reporters. A far cry from the big cities where we now see reporters are being targeted and attacked by both sides. That is, angry
and us two here,
demonstrators.
us two here, we're having that, and we'll talk about that later. Let me
Okay.
make sure I notes. So my note is it's very easy to construct your press passes, and so I put these on cardstock. They glue back to back, or they go back to back and just
Yep.
slip into one of those little plastic thingies, just like that.
Right.
And,
Yep.
and if you want to get really formal about it, you can send it. You can take it over to Staples and have them laminated it for you.
Yeah, heavy-duty laminate and a heavy-duty lanyard are recommended.
Yes, yes. And so if you're ordered to stop by the police, you can flash your badge and do your best to not let them stop you. And so, but we have had bad incidences happen here in the past month that I'll talk about later. But basically, that's how you do it. Just make sure you're legally covered.
Okay, very good.
We can move on.
I note that they're bright primary colors, red, black. The word media or radio is quite obvious. Usually, when police officers are scanning a crowd for troublemakers, who threw that bottle? And should we get these people who are yelling at us and threatening us? And what about that guy over there with the microphone and all that gear? These are difficult decisions for police officers who are often, very pissed off.
Mhm.
People are screaming horrible things at them. They're working a double shift, and perhaps they're not politically aligned with any of the demonstrators. We see this time and again. The press credentials, by and large, are something you should carry if you are acting as a member of the reporting field. That gets a little dicey. We know of examples both in New Orleans after the hurricane, in Portland and Seattle, where people make up their own press credentials to get behind police lines to cause trouble. So that undermines it for all the regular reporters. And what is a reporter? We'll get into this. Are you a demonstrator who are upset about police shooting black people in the back again? Or are you a reporter for a small community media outlet that's got a camera in the police officer's face? And maybe that changes. Most of the reporters, probably most of the people on this panel watching this panel right now have not been to journalism school or not paid professionals with a decade of experience at a commercial station. They're just community people. And with the change in technology, that is the cell phone, that is what we use, that is all changed now. Anything else you want to share with us, Davyne, right now?
No, I'll hold off for the troublesome times when we start talking about it.
All right. So how are we doing on unwinding that tape there at the WXOX studios?
We're going to try again.
All right. You can go ahead and roll it. Yeah, I don't know. Still no sound here, Mary.
Make sure you are on internet speaker.
You want to thank the sponsor? Go ahead.
I don't know what's going to happen with that. It just doesn't seem to be working.
Oh, sorry.
I will comment on the discussion about the press passes. We had one incident here where I think it was back in July when it seemed like the police actually targeted a group of our community journalists, especially the live streamers. And it didn't matter if they had press passes or not, and they just took them down, kind of almost like targeted them that night. And about 4 or 5 of them got picked up within 2 days and arrested.
And what were the charges, please?
I know that the African American woman
She got a felony.
She got a felony, and
5 feet away from a white.
and then she was arrested 5 feet away from a white live streamer which he only got a misdemeanor. But yeah, they really got aggressive with them, and they do follow them, like you'd mentioned.
But it's probably not illegal to live stream. Were they standing in the street or failing to follow an order?
Oh, they were doing exactly. They were doing exactly what they were told. They were on a sidewalk. They were out of the way. But if you watch the live streams where one of them gets captured, he is just tackled straight out of nowhere into a porta potty. It was rough. So a lot of times when I'm down there and I have my press pass, I talked to some of the streamers down there, and they have joked that, yeah, like the main commercial stations aren't going to be messed with, but the independent journalists, we've talked about how sometimes it just doesn't help us here in Louisville. So we just have to be prepared.
Describe being prepared.
For some of the people here, they do wear full bulletproof vests and body armor and gas masks.
Gas masks like these?
A couple of them have the big ones. Yeah. I am a little bit dumber and kind of just go down unarmed, like just in a t-shirt, and I just plan on running if things get strange. And again, it's always only if the police suddenly move on to us. Now, if we're just marching, nothing ever happens. So, but if the police suddenly come in, that's when, I was live streaming on the 28th when they were using the flashbangs and the tear gas and had to run through that.
So in Austin, and certainly elsewhere, and certainly in the Portlands and the Seattles of the world, reporters wearing crash helmets and gas masks are no longer, you don't feel like a complete knucklehead or a complete nerd looking like this. More and more, they have them. Oftentimes, the gas mask is in a bag on their hip. Everybody has small bags for their various gear. And as you allude to, Brian, your fleet-footedness, that if a flashbang goes off, or you can see them loading the pepper spray, or you can see the first streams of mace, what do? You run. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong running away from violence in our estimation. You're not getting paid probably. You're doing this because of moving forward on the cause of justice and freedom during tumultuous times, and you just want to get the story out. There's nothing wrong with running away from a little violence. And it's usually, we've sometimes compared riots to tornadoes. There'll be a jump. A tornado will suddenly leap out and smash a barn or a subdivision, and in 10 minutes later, it's over. Most of the violence that we have witnessed, and I was in I'm 66. I was in the heart of the Vietnam War demonstrations. Most of it happens pretty quickly. It's usually a small group of cops, a lot of sergeants. In New York, they call them white shirts, who just get pissed off. That guy, and I've got tape of this, we're not going to share with you. Literally, there's a line of police officers, then another line of bicycle officers, and there's a sergeant. Usually they're big, aggressive men. And you can just see them. We're going to get that guy, we're going to get that guy, and you definitely grab that guy on 3, 2, 1. And it's just like football. And you don't want to be the football of the opposing team. You want to run down the street. There's no, ego lost or net or whatever, especially if you're, quote, just a reporter, just covering the story. Mm-hmm. But we now see more and more that reporters are being targeted. I mean, again, it's probably not a crime to live stream in Kentucky. And I'm assuming that once the assistant district attorney or the district attorney who's running for re-election next year sees these charges, they'll probably drop them. As they say, you can beat the rap, but you can't beat the ride. That you were thrown to the ground roughly, and you were cuffed from behind, and you were thrown into a paddy wagon. Very unpleasant experience. And we're sorry that you see that. Nothing like that occurred in Ashland, did it, Davyne?
Yeah, so just about 3 weeks ago, there's a group that has developed that is not associated with our local Black Lives Matter group. And they're very loud, they're very vocal, and they are hell-bent on getting, here they've got a push to defund the police. And so that
Right.
night, that time that when the city council met and they only defunded by $700,000, this group went on a tear around town. And they do not want to be covered by the media, which is kind of a red flag because I was covering them a month before and they sent 3 guys over to stand in front of me with their shields and their backpacks and an umbrella to stop me from filming anything going on. Well, like you say, I just left because I can't fight it. But this last group, this last one that happened, somebody got knocked down and given a concussion over it. And our guy who was, who I showed you the press pass of, he was 50 or 60 feet away. He's a big guy and he can run fast. And he was, by the way, he was also fronted a military grade gas mask in the first week. Somebody just, hey, I've got something for you, and dropped it off to you. So, and he goes totally prepared with his, in his backpack of all protective gear. But so what happened was, now it's turned into a national scene that these Black Lives, they're trying to gloom it, they're trying to, and this is a national push, they're trying to make Black Lives Matter seem like they're anarchist and Antifa. And so the conservative media picked up the story about this guy being attacked, and they're trying to from the bully pulpit all the way down, portray a legitimate movement as being associated with these very extremists that are happening here in Asheville. And I know if it's happening here in Asheville, it's happening elsewhere.
Right, and in fact it is. I can pick right up on that issue. Here in Austin, longtime liberal, Democrat, feminist, environmental community with lots of great music. We routinely have big demonstrations, and oftentimes the mayor comes out, the police chief. And this is not a riot town. As we joke, if you want rioting, well, you go to Oakland. You want great live music and barbecue, you come to Austin. That's all changed now. The city shut down, and there's a group called the Mike Ramos Brigade, the RBM Mike Ramos Brigade, named after a person of color who was shot and killed by the police. They are a highly controversial, highly problematic group. They are Marxist, Leninist Maoists. They think the war has started, and you're either with them or fuck you. There's been a lot of violence associated with these folks. I'm really sorry Hiram is not here. They're not looking to compromise. They're looking to burn everything down. And they've done a little bit of that. So in some ways they have hijacked, and people from around the country kind of nod their heads on this. They've hijacked demonstrations. We're grannies for peace and vegetarians for a lesser violent police department. Please, we're going to have a rally. These guys show up and start causing trouble. And they are some tough fuckers. They have no problems with running at the police or throwing stuff at the police or starting fires or looting. There's been some serious trouble. Now they're going to be upset if I associate their name directly with that sort of stuff. But by and large, the model of demonstrating at the police department, at City Hall, at the famous Texas State Capitol, has in many ways been hijacked by radical dissidents who have sort of thrown out the rule book. One, just be cordial with the cops. Sure, you can yell at the cop. That's what they get paid for. But it's all changed now. So the police come out in body armor, batons, mace, those damn beanbag shotguns, which they get carried away with. And then the bicycle cops, and we can address this. Who would have thought that bicycles are weapons? The police department in Austin and many cities use bicycles as weapons, that they'll swoop in real quick, 30 or 40 of them. These are young, tough, mean cops with a bicycle and helmets, and they'll throw that bicycle, they'll use it against you, and they'll clear a line real quick. It's difficult to see. I myself was slugged in the back by a passing bicycle cop who said, "Get on the sidewalk." And I popped up on a little curb, but it wasn't the sidewalk, it was just a curb, and he slugged me in the back. I do not think he knew I was a senior citizen or that I had press credentials on or that I was broadcasting live. He didn't care. So we're getting these overreactions that, as you say, Davyne, get picked up by the America One network and the Fox network, and of course right up to the White House very quickly. And now Antifa is a terrorist threat organization. Who else has opinions about that? Has that occurred in any other cities of the folks that are here?
Absolutely. In New York, they do it all the time. They're very drilled at it. No, they do it. They're extremely sophisticated. They will use them as basically like mini armored cars. It's quite amazing to watch.
Other towns? Has anybody else had a negative impression of what used to be the friendly bicycle cop?
I don't.
Portland has, I know.
I don't think we've had them here. I have not seen any police on bikes. They do pull out Bearcats and tanks here, but
we've had police on bikes, and we had an incident that happened about 6 weeks ago. But someone asked in the chat room, can a station pull in the feed and run it over the air? And yes, you can. So if you have someone and you know you're in the middle of it, I can go in remotely using Google Desktop Remote. And I can turn off the automation and I can turn on that live feed and it will go out on the air.
Now, I assume you do a hefty amount of disclaimers for the 7 dirty words. You don't say there's a chance that the F word's going to go over our air?
No, because our guy is far enough away that he's not actually getting close-up audio. Because these people that have been doing it lately are the ones that they don't want to be filmed. The only person they want filming them is their own guy that's going to slant the story to them. So it's far enough away. But someone did ask, is there a way to bring it in? And you could actually go and voice track remotely in, and that's a little more complicated than what I do. It's just that if I see something happening that's just like you said, something in big deal that I can tell it's going to go on for a little while, I'll go pull it up and access it remotely and play it on the air.
Right. I mean,
because I trust our guy to stay far enough away that we're not getting the real bad language that is very common, by the way.
But you don't do any disclaimers saying that they might say fuck the police?
You can't whenever you're the way that I go in. You can if I went into our server and opened up our automation and did a voice track and came on, or I could, if I saw something quickly happening, I could quickly record it on my phone and send it to email and go to email on my broadcast computer and play that announcement. Then I just haven't done it. But that's another way to do that disclaimer. But you know, we're in the middle of such intense times. We're all learning how to deal with this, and each situation is a learning curve.
Yeah, as it plays out live. Go ahead.
I was just agreeing. Yeah, everybody has changed their tactics here, and it just keeps developing through the months.
So can I ask?
Yeah. Hello, Paul.
Yeah, if I can ask a question here, I'm gonna precede it with a very quick testimonial. During the Democratic National Convention in Los Angeles, many years ago, my son and I were attacked by the LA police. I was beaten up, and that started with the provocation of two people who were police agents. He and I followed those police agents back several blocks to the staging area that the police had, where they spent a good deal of time talking to detectives. We were far enough away that we didn't know what they were talking about. But I wonder now, knowing that identifying provocateurs is a dicey business, but it's also difficult to do. Since we now have instantaneous video stuff, is there a way of finding out whether those people that you're dealing with, Davyne, and whether people who are creating the violence around the country can be identified and outed as provocateurs? In Chico, we had a sheriff's officer infiltrate the Peace Center for about a year before he was identified, and it made a big difference to get that guy identified. So that my question is, what's going on with identifying provocateurs?
That's a great question. And I was just on the phone, or I was just on a Zoom call for 2 hours talking to people locally who were concerned about the same thing. And what do you do? So again, it goes into that we're in such an interesting and paradigm shifting situation. And honestly, I feel like smartphones that can capture action have changed the world. And without smartphones in our hands, what we're all talking about now would not be happening. And it's made a huge, I mean, everybody has some power in their hand now, and the traditional people in power and the provocateurs in power, they don't like it.
Right. That's Paul. That's Paul with the Chico Community Radio Station and longtime friend. Absolutely good point. How do you know the guy who just chucked a water bottle at the police sergeant is not in fact getting, he's on probation and they'll let him off early if he causes trouble. And now let us not forget, we're all wearing masks. Everybody's wearing masks. Now, and I have found, and this is a thing that you other reporters may have seen and endured, and I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Have you been confronted? Who the fuck are you? Who are you? Who's that camera belong? Who do you work for? In my face.
Exactly.
We've had I'm a 66-year-old. Go right ahead. Yes. So I'm a 66-year-old white guy in a cowboy hat. And I sometimes describe myself to the demonstrators, but most of whom are a third my age, at least half of them are people of color, and they're all pissed off. And who am I? So I say, I'm the 66-year-old white guy in a cowboy hat. You guys should know me. I put a radio station on here. I've been around for 40 years. And they see me and they trust me. A lot of them just don't want their picture taken. That's not unreasonable. And so I have an old Burning Man habit. You always ask first. Consent. Hi, how you doing? Great. Hey, that's a great sign. Can I take your picture? No, don't take my picture. No problem. Sometimes they'll say, well, hold the sign up.
Yeah, that's legit. That's a legitimate way. If our guy stays far enough back, but he also has a drone. So he uses a drone to cover from above. And from that, you can zero in and you can see the troublemakers. So he's worked with the police in finding these people who start with firecrackers. And when they started with the firecrackers, he said you could see the crowd from above because he was videotaping from above. There's an activity that happens. He says it's just like watching a hurricane happen where the crowd
or a tornado.
Swirling. The crowd starts swirling and then trouble erupts kind of from the center of that. And so I agree. Try not to get people up close if possible. Ours is a drone situation, or this guy stays far enough back that he's not getting in people's faces.
Right. Even if they're covered. Now, I'm so sorry Hiram is not here and the folks from Concrete Reporting, because you can see them in the footage. They're right there. There's the police line. They're loading up the tear gas guns. And here comes 700 angry demonstrators who are also fairly well armed and protected with body armor and shields and fireworks. And they're looking to they're looking to mess it up. And in the middle, you got, reporters. You have to stay out of violence's way. No problem backing up. Much of the best footage I have shot since this has all started is me backing up, back up.
Yeah.
And the reporters, be they the Fox News affiliate cameraman or the funny little photographer for the local paper or activist type reporters, it's just the nature of the beast that you tend to bunch up. You're off to the side. You've got an exit point. If things go real bad, if a shot rings out, which way are you going to run? Right? You want to be quick. You want to stay low. You don't want to trample anybody, and you don't want to be trampled, and you want to turn a corner. Right? We've seen shootings. We've seen shootings. Hiram was the fellow, the Jared Foster killing here at 4th and Congress in downtown Austin, Texas. A guy fired off 5 rounds. An off-duty military guy moonlighting as an Uber driver, shot 5 times. Jared Foster, a well-known fella, but in fact, Jarrett was carrying his AR-15 as he had been pushing his profoundly handicapped wife through the crowd. A well-known, highly regarded fellow. Yes, he was armed. This is Texas. It's not that unusual to see people walking with guns now. People go, I put that on my social media, and people are like, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see guns on Austin. I don't, I'm like, all right, don't look. That is the nature of the beast. Let me say that in all likelihood, there will be more violence and more serious violence around the American election. Everybody should be nodding their head going, yeah. You don't have to go to the demonstrations. You could stay at home. You could talk to your friends, and you can kind of check out. But the chances of us getting through this election cycle without more and more serious violence are quickly fading. Anyone else, please?
There's Ann Garrison had her hand up here for a moment.
Please.
All right. Yeah, there we go. Oh, hello.
They should be able to unmute themselves.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I got it.
Okay.
Okay. I wonder whether the protests that most of us here are attending are permitted or whether they're or not. Or are they flash mobs?
Ours are permitted, but they still, the ones that are the provocateurs are going into the hotels and marching through the hotels saying, liar, liar, gentrifier. If we don't get our way, we're gonna tear it all down. So, and they were permitted. So they weren't supposed to do that. They agreed that they weren't going to go on private property, but they did.
Yeah, and most of the demonstrations in Austin are, again, social media. And the police will tell you, well, if it's on the internet and it's open social media, you bet we're watching. I got a whole floor full of cops that are watching social media. Most of them, as long as you stay on the sidewalk, they don't really care. They may tell you they don't care about their politics. Chances are a member of the Austin Bicycle Team, as they're called, probably doesn't share the same political view as you. But it demonstrate permitted or not is no longer kind of the issue. Austin had 2 or 3 days of real serious rioting, a lot of injuries. Paramedics were shot with beanbags. Again, fleet-footedness saved me from being shot. Lots of pepper spray, lots of beanbags, lots of mace, lots of shields knocking down 98-pound girls. We had full-scale violence and rioting, which Austin has virtually no precedent for. It's just not a rioting town. That went real bad. And the good liberals, the good Democrats on the city council were flummoxed by this. They said no more beanbags, no more tear gas. And they said they cut $150 million from the budget. Well, that was so much posturing, and we'll see how much it actually was. But in many cities, you got plenty of people, powerful people, influential people who cut big checks to campaign renewals saying, yeah, next time hit them twice as hard. God damn it. Those friggin' demonstrators. And the country is being torn asunder. And these demonstrations are often the flashpoint that makes the news that further split people's opinions.
Who's cutting checks to whom?
Conservative Republicans in Williamson County, that's just north of Austin, do not want the Confederate statue taken down. It has become a political issue. They don't think it's racism and the celebration of slavery. They think it's heritage. And by God, as a Williamson County Republican, I'll cut you a check for $500 for your campaign. Now, remember, everything in America is politics. Everything in Texas and Austin is for politics for sure. It's not clear how this is going to play out. Anybody here got a crystal ball? How is the election going to turn out? Will there be lawsuits successfully overturning it at the Supreme Court? Doubt feeds to turmoil. And people say, well, and people come up to me and they're quite surprised. You were at that riot? I saw that on TV. You were there? You were part of that? I said, no, I was there, but I wasn't a part of it. I was directing traffic. I was conducting interviews. I was running medics into people who had been maced or roughed up. I don't riot. But yeah, I was there, and I think it's important to record this. Do not be seduced by violence, my friends. Why do you think hockey is so popular? Do not be seduced by violence. If it bleeds, it leads. That's not why you're there. You're there to see what happens when the underlying issues of being ignored, being violated, being violence, having to school, all the issues that lead to these riots, shooting black people in the back, stuff like that. That's where you're going with this, not just the picture of the police baton crossing the young lady's head. Do not be seduced by violence.
I have Jim Dingerman on the phone, with his hand up here.
Go Pacifica.
Speak.
Says mic on.
Jim, you have to unmute your mic.
Unmute, yeah. Huh?
After Jim speaks, why don't we have 3 or 4 people who have not spoken yet step up and put a question forth to the group.
All right. Well.
Okay, he's not able to, so maybe you can type your question in the chat, Jim.
Okay, I'm not looking at chat right now. Why don't you help me out there?
Okay, okay, he says, can I do it? Cannot unmute. All right. All right. Yeah, hold on. Let me, okay. Well, I can't.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. I got it. Okay. I agree with you 100%, Jim. And what I'm fearful of is that we have not seen it yet. Right. In these states like you live in Texas where guys can walk around with automatic weapons, I'm surprised we haven't had more shooting, mass shooting. And look at what just happened in Michigan. I think we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg with all this. And, they can't get away with that kind of crap in New York City. But they can get away with that in other parts of the country. And so that's what I'm fearful of. And how the hell do you deal with that? Because Trump is calling for that. Trump is calling for that. And we're in for it with this. And I posted a whole bunch of stuff about bikes, bikes as weapons. So you guys can look at those. But I'm just curious to ask the people, what are people going to do if you start having some crazy motherfuckers coming in and basically doing the kind of shit they did in Las Vegas? I could see that happening with the way some of these people are.
The best answer I can give, and speaking most broadly, is leave. Leave the area of the shooting, maybe leave town for a while, go see grandma in the country. 1939 Germany, as they say, liberals make lousy shots. I got hundreds of pictures of 3%ers, Proud Boys, militia types who love to masturbate with their guns in front of the state capitol. Now, it's a pretty safe place. And here's another tip for you reporters. If you're taking a video of a guy, get that fucking camera out of my face. And they're very physical and they're about to hit you, right? What do? You back up. But don't ask that question in a dark alley. You ask that in front of the city hall or in front of the state capitol where there's lots of cops around. Do you face a little risk? Yeah. Most of the pictures I have of these guys, there's a police officer and another one right over there, right? And generally speaking, they're not going to let anybody punch anybody. You don't want to be the first one. Back up, back up, back up. Now, I take pictures of people's faces, right? These Proud Boys, these 3%ers, I want a nice, clean mug shot of those. And they don't wear masks. Hello, they don't wear masks. Thank you very much. And I feed that to a bunch of activist groups. Now, we, as a matter of policy, we don't dox. Doxing is where you take people's private documents, docs, and put them out in the intent to do them harm. That is, where is the kid's school? What's the wife's office number? You know, things to cause harm. Doxing is rioting online. Let me repeat that. Doxing is rioting online. Don't do that. But if you want to identify heavily armed, angry white guys making racial slurs in your town, I suggest you do that. But be very careful doing it. Remember, they can remember you too. But of course, you're wearing a big old cowboy hat and a mask. So they don't have as much to work with. And I should also note that the press credentials that we carry, Austin Airwaves press credentials, we don't wear those publicly all the time. A lot of these folks hire them in the concrete reporting and the famous unicorn riot folks. They've got press credentials all over, the big white letters in reverse. Press, press, you can't miss them. That is not our style. We have this laminate, which is on around my neck. And it goes into my shirt pocket. And it's right there. And if and only if I need that, that is, the cops are about to sweep the street, or some assholes are unhappy having their picture taken and knowing it's going to show up on tonight's local neighborhood list, making them look like complete assholes, then I pull it out. Much of the footage I have done that is dramatic, I'm holding the camera in one hand and the press credentials in the other, and I'm backing up. Back up, back up, back up. All right, so a couple of questions from folks who haven't asked yet, please. Come on, don't be shy, it's radio.
Okay, anyone? We did have some questions up here in the chats.
How many people are tuned in right here?
We've got 58.
Come on, you're not all wallflowers.
There we go. Anyone?
We got about, what, 15 minutes left? Does that sound right?
This was scheduled till 4:30, but you can go over. It's fine. Our next presentation isn't until 5, so that's
Davyne or LaGanzie, go get LaGanzie. Do you have any more you want to share with us? Again, I'm real sorry that the I hate to say celebrities, but the two really well-known folks that we'd hoped to have here, they couldn't make it. I'm very sorry.
I want to reiterate that I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, and I think the information that came out here will help people understand how to be as safe as possible, and it's better to walk away from a situation than get shot, and because it's possible that you could get shot.
There you go. Good advice. Don't get shot. By the way, what you're looking at in my background here, this is level 3A body armor. This is on order right now from Austin Airwaves. It was $299. Level 3A is available to the public. The highest end body armors, which include ceramic plates and a number of accessories, are not available to civilians, just to law enforcement and the military. Body armor that you would either wear over your clothes or under your clothes is something you might consider. It is a terrible sign of the times that we own gas masks, crash helmets, running shoes, and body armor. If you're on the Austin Airwaves list, you know this has been the source of considerable discussion, and people are they're disheartened. They're upset that just a nice old 66-year-old hippie like me will now be toting body armor. Again, if things go south, if things go bad, if there's going to be violence, if there is violence, go home, get laid, rough house with the dog, make dinner, get stoned, You have a couple drinks. You don't have to be there. I doubt if there's any career-oriented folks on this list. If they don't make the 5 o'clock deadline, that's it for them. We're all community activists who found a medium of radio, community radio, to be the most effective means of communicating to our individual communities. Don't get shot. Don't get roughed up. Just go home. You know, there's nothing wrong with running. You know, I ain't gonna run down the street, make me look like some chicken shit. Don't fall for that. Just back away. What the police want, of course, is for you to back away. They want the crowds to disperse and stop blocking the 5 o'clock traffic. Now, we have a problem is that the police are there to protect property. The police are there to protect the powers that be, the government, who have now turned clearly against many Americans' view of what democracy should be. They're not like I mean, it really has changed now. But you're going to go on with your life. You're going to have some great times. You're going to see the world. You're going to get your ego rubbed some really good. But don't get your ass shot doing this. All right?
Okay. Let's see. We tried retoggling here. Can someone try to unmute there?
Yeah, I'm unmuted now.
Oh, okay, good.
Go ahead.
I've been kind of having this little back and forth with Paul in the comments, basically asked how did I feel about all this as a person of color. So basically, like I said in the chat, I think when you have a position of privilege, it's easy to say that you can just run. If you're like me, you can't get away from your blackness. So you can still be a target. So again, it hits a little differently if you're a person of color. Now, yeah, like Tom said, you can go home or get laid if you're lucky enough to get laid or get high, whatever you were talking about. But again, at least for me, you know, and of course at the end of the day, you got to think, at what point is it no longer worth it? But I take my obligation as a community broadcaster very serious, because for the Black community of Jonesboro, KLEK, that's it. You know, so if the ish hits the fan, I feel a duty, a responsibility to be there. Now, one thing I will say that has helped me, and this even goes back to even before all this went down, and I think this is something important for all of us to take away. Build your relationships with your local community. I think that's very important, especially your government leaders. And you do that by, you know, serving your community, giving them a voice, giving them a platform before things go bad. Someone asked earlier, did I have credentials? Well, I don't have, I mean, I made a credential like way back in the day, which I'll share with you right quick. But I haven't actually worn it in years because everybody pretty much knows who LaGanzie Kale is. Everybody pretty much knows who KLEK is through, you know, years of doing things like having the police chief come on the radio once a month, having the mayor, the county judge, all these other officials on. So when you do that, it definitely helps you to and there's the media pass that I made. I made it from this website called bighugelabs.com. I actually made that in like 2015, the year we launched, so obviously I don't even look like that anymore. But again, I just think it's important that you form relationships in your community so that the community will be your partners. And again, when I mentioned at the first of my presentation, when I was, you know, standing in front of those police officers, some of the people that were texting me were like the county judge, like one of these circuit court judges, you know, people that were in, you know, prominent positions because they appreciated the work that we do community. Now, again, it still doesn't take away from the end of the day that I'm still a Black man out here trying to do this. And is there fear? Yes. I mean, I am absolutely terrified of what is to come after November 3rd. You know, I've been honestly asking myself, what is it going to be like to live in a potential dictatorship? Are we going to be able to travel? I mean, I don't know where we're going next year for GRC, but, you know, are we even going to be allowed to travel to go to GRC? Now, some of you may snicker and laugh at that, but, you know, when you have witnessed this all the things that's going on, I don't know. So I'll do it for questions.
All right, others,
May
questions, please?
may I just jump in for a bit? Okay, my name is Sheila, and I'm in New York. Jim, I like your instructions. I think they are pertinent and very critical and important as someone who worked, you know, in war zone and was at WBAI newsroom at one point. Hey, Jim Dingman. And I want to say, Jim Dingman, that I am scared, and even though New York seems so safe, look what's happening in our ultra-Orthodox community here. And in Park Slope, where I live, last week, over 100 riot police came into President Street, because Jim knows where that is. And in a neighborhood where it's said that it's a little more gentrified, let's call it that. Because because of COVID, the neighbors would come out on their stoop with a little stereo, playing some music and food, nothing big. Last week, the riot police were there and people were asking questions. Why are you here? This is New York. The protests are happening at the Barclays Center. My husband and I, we go down to the protest. Police, so much, there's a sea of blue, right, are there, and white shirts. In my neighborhood up at Prospect Park, there was a protest in Prospect Park where it's people are making maybe, you know, over 6 digits, right? We walk up to the park and we notice, because we always stay in the back distance, and what we noticed, there was not one police officer there. None, not until we reached Grand Army Plaza by the Brooklyn Public Library. We saw the police across the street, 1 or 2 of them dotted around, laughing and chatting with white folks, right? And to what LaGanzie said, he can't run, he's a black man. He can't run. If he's running to catch a bus, his life is at risk, right? Especially if he has a bag, right? And so for this, I just really love this session so much, Jim. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And, you know, we need action. We can't run away. We can't run away from this. We need action as media people, as you know, especially grassroots radio people. We need some action of how we will survive and how we will impact. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Patrica. Always a pleasure to see you, my friend.
All right. I have CJ here who had a question. CJ Leander? No? Oh, there.
So while we're waiting for him, what our situation here in Asheville is the provocateurs and the right wingers are now the ones doing all of the activity in town. And the legitimate, I would say the legitimate people associated with Black Lives Matter have gone to the background. I had a press conference about a month ago of all of our local Black ministers and Black leaders in the community meeting to say we are working for, by the way, our town voted for reparations. So the ministers and the Black leaders said they are meeting quietly behind the scenes, and now all of the activity is a combination of the provocateurs and the Blue Lives Matter people. And both of those sides seem to have great big chips on their shoulders, daring each side to knock that chip off. That's what it's evolved into here in Asheville.
Yeah, I mean, we're not the only players on the street. I'll show you a few pictures of what we have to face here in Austin. Again, in Texas, you can carry a semi-automatic weapon with extra clips and a bayonet and a handgun, and nobody looks twice, unfortunately. There are a lot of guns in Texas, and it's getting kind of scary. This guy is probably a Boogaloo boy. Again, they're very conveniently unmasked. That's very nice of them to do that. But what's happened now is that the radicals, the lefties, the Mike Ramos Brigade folks, they bring their own guns too. This is probably a 3%er here. Again, it takes a little nerve to walk up to these guys. Again, my goal is to take these guys face shots.
In Kentucky, it's kind of the same as Texas, and we have the same kind of war happening where white militia are coming in. The experience, and this addresses something that was in the chat a little bit ago, that we keep seeing is as the protesters use Breonna Taylor Park as a base, white militia know to come down there and target people. The protesters who are usually just there hanging out, eating barbecue, whatnot. But when they do make an official announcement that they're going to come to Louisville, the police often escort them. They will put barricades up and kind of be on their side. I mean, the police really coddle to the white protesters, or the white militia coming in to mess with the protesters here. What the response has been is a lot of the protesters here now feel like they have to go down to the square armed because we need protection, and we don't feel like the police are going to do that.
Are we live?
Yes,
Clay,
go ahead. Go ahead.
unmuted.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think this is Clay, Leander, and
Hi, Clay.
hey, good and timely presentation. Actually, we could have used this 4 or 5 months ago. And hindsight's 50-50.
Sorry, I'm late.
So no, man, it's, we have to reinvent it as we go along. It's just a quick observation. I'm calling today from Contra Costa County, which is catty corner to Alameda County, not far from Berkeley, Oakland, where like the free speech movement and a lot of the great riots has its roots. And it's kind of interesting to see how this is, how the movement has now, out of necessity, had to rise in other places around the country without reinventing the wheel, but in ways that we wouldn't have imagined 20, 30, 50 years ago out here. It's coming back around to the broadcast stuff, just an observation and then a question for the panelists is the an observation that one local TV station I work, we would get our credentials, at least here in California, by going through the highway patrol. And they would give us like a little extra badge that would give us some additional credential when going across the front line. In the age where we're having also a poor quality of civil discourse, I wanted to tag on to something someone mentioned earlier, and it's one thing to show up during the protests unannounced and on a moment's notice, which is great and necessary. But if we could proactively develop relationships with the various enforcement agencies ahead of time, so that we're not a completely unfamiliar entity as we go into these situations, I think might help us go a long way, and perhaps we could do our role to try to inspire at least some avenue for dialogue and back and forth engagement. I'm continue looking how we're going to do this with the station I'm managing now in San Joaquin County in Stockton, California, one of the new Pacific affiliates out there. Question has come up with my board of directors of liability issues, and I'm just wondering if folks here have additional provisions in their station insurance policies to, or maybe it's covered under existing policies for coverage of such actions. Do you maintain relationships with your local rep of the National Lawyers Guild to remain on standby? Does your station board or management have policies specifically before they just start giving out credentials for people to go cover? What kind of training? Are you doing any kind of nonviolent training with some of the local organizing groups that do nonviolent actions? So I'll leave it there. I gave some food for thought.
Is there are a couple attorneys online? Did I see Peter Frank there? Can we get the opinion of an attorney there?
Yeah, I'm here. I think
What is your opinion, counselor?
Well, in the insurance question, most standard policies have an exception for riots and civil discord. So you probably want to get a rider for that if you can, but it's going to be expensive.
You mean a riot rider?
Yes. Civil disturbance rider. Or talk to a sympathetic insurance agent about how you can get coverage, but I would not rely on a standard liability policy. I'm not sure if there was another legal question, but that was what came to mind as Clay was talking.
Okay. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Clay. Other questions?
Yeah, it's Otis.
Hey, Otis.
I have we've really been talking about the mechanics of this, but one of the things I'd like to introduce is the possibility of sharing the stuff that we get, so that we get it on more than just our station. I certainly can put it up on an audio port. It'd be great if we sort of had a network of this kind of information so that we could really spread it around. I'd think it'd be interesting to try to figure out how to do that.
Well, isn't audio port the answer? I mean, how many people filed the audio port? Hundreds, right?
I don't know. Are we doing that? Are we putting one of the things you can put up on audio port is raw news.
Yeah, or you can put raw sounds up. I've uploaded some of mine there.
But audio port has so much stuff on it, it's hard to see it. You know, it would be nice if we had a network, maybe some, maybe a mail thing or something, some way to communicate what's going on when this stuff happens. It doesn't always get reported. It's not always, universal. And as, Jim has pointed out and others, we're probably going to see more of this.
Oh, yeah. Annie, you want to share something with us?
Yeah, I just wanted to just quickly add about language, more than the technicalities of the broadcast. Just looking, there's been some discussion in the chat, side chat, looking about using the word riot, using the word provocateur, using the word violence. As community broadcasters, I think we need to be really careful about how we use our language. In Portland, the riots are clearly caused by the police. And it is really the police that are doing the rioting. So when we hear, mainstream media talking about the riots that are happening around the city, it's one thing. When we hear community people using the same terms, it hits really hard. So be careful on language. Also, provocateur. I'm not sure, Davyne, who you're referring to when you're saying provocateur. traditionally, that's like an undercover cop that's using violence or shenanigans to justify over response from the police. Some people use the word provocateur to mean folks that are using tactics they don't agree with. Maybe that's smashing windows, maybe that's graffiti, maybe I don't know what. But I think that it's, again, important to watch the language we use, because in Portland, again, there are, God, very few out of the hundreds of people that gather nightly and have for, 160 some days. There are very few people that are smashing anything. Are they actually provocateurs? In the traditional sense, there's some question about that. If they're not, they're not being particularly helpful, and they are kind of ostracized, by the larger crowd. But again, it would be easy to write off the whole, and many mainstream media folks have written off the whole nightly protest because somebody set a dumpster on fire in a crowd of hundreds of people. One person's action overrides, and so it's important to distinguish and to be careful about how we're reporting these things, because really it's 200 people meeting for social justice and meeting because Black Lives Matter and wanting to make change. If somebody made the observation that if everyone played by the rules and just met during the day, it doesn't push the envelope in the same way. And so there is definitely a role in the overall movement for some of the things that are happening now that may include tactics that not everyone agrees with. But I think it's important for us to be careful about how we report it and to watch the language we use while we do so.
Okay, so to address your comment about my using the word provocateur, I actually saw that show up in the chat, and I can say from our 4 months of videotaping each of the events, it became clear after a while that there are people there who were actually there with their hearts with the Black Lives Matter movement, but people came in to cause trouble so that they overpowered the message of the Black Lives Matter movement. That's what I mean by provocateur.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had that problem a little bit here. We usually refer to them as outside instigators, but yeah.
Well, for being on camera and being in the conference right now, that might have been a poor choice of words, but basically it's people who are in the middle of the action who are trying to make the main message look bad so that it doesn't get any more traction than it already does. I've never seen a movement go across the world like the Black Lives Matter movement did when it happened, and it's a very powerful movement, and there are people who do not want it, and so they're going to show up and try to make the whole thing look bad and wrong.
Yeah,
and the point has to be reminded that they don't pay attention until we start rioting, right? Rioting is the language of those unheard, and that this is easy for us middle class folks to go down there and spend a few hours, but people are getting gunned down in the street and they're pissed off. How do you expect them to respond? It's certainly not justifying violence here. It's sort of like, I understand it, but I don't justify it. And we're at that juncture now when the next horrible shooting occurs. It's reasonable to assume that some people are going to be pissed off enough that they're going to do something stupid. And that is what, if it bleeds, it leads. The right wing and militant media will pick up on. Not that 5,000 people showed up, but that 6 of them overturned a police car.
Okay,
we
Jim,
face that challenge. Go ahead,
Jim. I'm sorry. We're getting very close to the beginning of the next the next thing here, so we should probably wrap things up.
Okay. Anybody have something urgent they've been sitting on that they wanted to share with us? This has been an excellent workshop. Again, I'm sorry that 2 of our prominent members of the community couldn't make it, but you guys have picked up aim remarkably well. This has been a fascinating discussion. I think there's lots of things to take away from it. And if there are no further comments, we'll go down to the virtual bar and have a few brewskis.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.